Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over the ongoing winter storm for parts of the central and southern plains. That's going to be stretching all the way up through into parts of the Gulf states, the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and then back through into the interior northeast. We have an ice threat for the mid-Atlantic and parts of the coastal northeast, as well as a flooding threat for parts of the southeast, and a very cold air threat for parts of the northern plains. So we have a bunch of different factors with this storm. We have wind chill warnings all the way down from North Dakota and Minnesota down into southern Texas, and we have winter storm warnings which stretch from parts of New Mexico and Colorado all through Texas and then back up into Pennsylvania and Ohio. So this is a very expansive winter storm. We're going to be giving you my snowfall forecast at the end of today's video, and we're going to be timing this system out for you guys and giving you an idea of what you should be expecting through the day today and into tomorrow and even into Tuesday. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. And this is one of the most active winter or National Weather Service pages that you're going to see in quite a while. We have these winter storm warnings in a pink, which stretch from Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico down through Texas, Louisiana, and back up through into Pennsylvania and Ohio, kind of in a U shape there, where you're dealing with these winter storm warnings over a huge area. And I don't remember the last time that we had these winter storm warnings all the way down to the Gulf Coast and then all the way up to the Canadian border and over some of the Great Lakes. So this is definitely an interesting winter storm, one of the more unique winter storm setups. It started off in the northwest where they have another system going on, and that's why they have more winter weather advisories and warnings up. But that's where this originated. It dropped down into the Rockies yesterday. It's currently in the Rockies, but it's about to move into the plains and then make its way up through the eastern United States. We have winter weather advisories for parts of the mid-Atlantic and coastal northeast, as well as for parts of the Great Lakes and parts of the Midwest and mid-Mississippi Valley. We also have some more along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, a little bit of southern Texas, and then scattered throughout parts of the Rockies there where we have some more winter weather advisories. We also have some winter storm watches up for parts of Alabama and for a bigger area over parts of the interior northeast from parts of Ohio all the way up to Maine. Those are most likely going to be upgraded to some winter storm warnings if I had to guess, because they are expecting over 6 to 8 inches of snow in a lot of those areas. So I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 12 to 24 hours those are upgraded to some more winter storm warnings and extended all the way up into eastern Maine as well. We have some of those ice storm warnings up for parts of eastern Kentucky, western West Virginia as well. We have some flood watches in effect for parts of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama as well. And then we have some blizzard warnings even for central New Mexico. We have wind chill warnings in effect in this darker kind of blue shade, I guess you could say, for the northern and central plains. That's the wind chill warnings that you can see, but because of all these winter storm warnings, they're actually covered up. They stretch all the way down into Texas there. So we have wind chill warnings that go from the Canadian border to the Mexico border. And that's one of the more drastic things that we haven't seen in quite a while. We also have wind chill advisories in the lighter blue on either side of the wind chill warnings into Montana, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana as well. So overall, we have pretty much everything with this winter storm: cold, warm, snow, rain. There's going to be a bunch of different factors into this, and it's a very dynamic system. Your records yesterday for the continental United States, your high temperature for the entire continental United States was in Spring, Florida. They got to 89 degrees, and the complete opposite, 25 miles east of Ely, Minnesota, they got to negative 50 degrees for their low temperature yesterday. The highest rainfall report 5 miles north of Brookings, Oregon, and that's in southwestern Oregon. And your snowfall report, your highest snowfall report, 4.5 miles west of Manistee, Michigan, and that's because they actually had southerly winds, which were, again, coming out of the south, moving up the entire spine of Lake Michigan, and then kind of hitting right into this little area of the UP of Michigan right here, and that's where that snowfall report was taken, and that's why they had over 20 inches of snowfall in some of those areas. So here's what the current radar looks like, and I'm recording this right around 8 8:45 a.m. Eastern time, 7:45 a.m. Central time, and we're looking at more of that snow stretching through parts of the plains. So from the southern plains up through the central plains, we have more of that moderate snowfall, moving from about Fort Smith, Arkansas, to about Amarillo, Texas. There, so we have pretty much a band of fairly decent, steady snowfall. It's really broken up by this point, but as the system starts to head out of the higher terrain of the Rockies and starts to dip into the southern plains, it will be able to access some of that Gulf moisture that's coming out of the south, and it should start to strengthen a little bit more, and that's when we're going to start to see a little bit more cold air be pulled in, as well as a little bit more strengthening and more heavier snowfall bands start to move through. Now, let's start timing this out, but before we can do that, we have to understand what the dynamics of the system are. We have a polar vortex up to the north into the Dakotas. That's what's supplying your cold air, and that polar vortex makes a general troughing shape through the Midwest and the northern plains. Now we have more of that Gulf moisture and an area of general low pressure up through the Gulf of Mexico. So we have general storminess over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's actually going to supply one of the secondary low pressures that are going to move up through the Appalachians. So this is a very important part of the system. When does this low pressure come out of the Gulf of Mexico, as well as how much cold air is pressing into the system? Your low pressure is currently right around here in New Mexico and Colorado. That's going to be dipping out into the southern plains and then moving somewhere near the Appalachians into the eastern United States. So there are a bunch of different factors with this, and there is a lot of different things that we have to be tracking and keep in mind when we're looking at this forecast. So this would be by early this afternoon. We still have more of that snow back through the southern and central plains. We have still that storminess over parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and again, that's going to be a crucial part of this because that's what's going to set up your next low pressure, which is going to continue to move up the Appalachians. Now, as we continue this forward, you're going to see that that low pressure continues to head further to the east, and this is when that low pressure, that general area of storminess over the Gulf of Mexico starts to take over. So your low pressure died out over the Rockies. It was too much with that mountainous terrain that really broke apart that system, but what we're seeing is that we have another low pressure down here east of Mexico there, and that's where you're going to get your next low pressure to form out. We're dealing with ice spreading from Tennessee to about southern Texas and southeastern Texas, as well as some snow further to the north of there. So we're dealing with snow through Illinois south to about northern Mexico there, where we're dealing with all of that snow. We have, again, that ice further to the south, and along the immediate coast, it might be a little bit more of a rain event. And then even that ice makes its way down to the coast. We have snow making its way fairly far to the south, and now we're starting to see the system really ramp up. Now, my personal forecast with this is that we're going to see this low pressure start to strengthen right as it's about to hit about Louisiana and Alabama, right as it's about to hit this area, and as it's doing that, it's still over the warm Gulf of Mexico waters, and I think you will get a fairly heavy band of 1 to 2.5 inches per hour that sets up right through this area because of how close you are to the Gulf of Mexico, how much moisture you have, and the fact that it's still going to be strengthening as you're still seeing some of that snow. So you might see a quick 2 or 3 inches of snow quickly fall over some of those areas, and I don't think a lot of the models are really picking up on that because we still have the system strengthening. As it heads onto land, it's going to start to weaken, so some of those snow rates might not be as intense. Now, as we continue forward, this would be by Monday morning into the early afternoon, and you can see that low pressure strengthened, but now it's starting to weaken a little bit. You still have such a fierce polar vortex that even if this does weaken a little bit, you're still going to see some fairly heavy precipitation because of that pressure gradient that could create a little bit more energy. We have some more of that snow back through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, and some of that ice right through into parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Now, this is going to continue as we go through Tuesday into Tuesday morning, back through into Tuesday early afternoon. Now it's snowing back through the interior Northeast, northern New England, and it's icing further to the south of there, and even further to the south we have some of that rain closer to that low pressure, which by this point is over parts of North Carolina and Virginia. That's going to continue to head further east and north, and that's when we're going to start to see some of those heavier bands of snow enter parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine as that low pressure nears, because we have another high pressure forming further to the south right here. That's going to press in more cold air, and that should allow most of these areas in especially northern New England to stay all snow And with that low pressure so close to you guys, it's by this point, it's right over New Jersey and Long Island. If it's so close to those areas, like the European is showing, you can have some fairly heavy snowfall rates and snowfall bands because of the proximity to that low pressure with so much energy in the atmosphere. Now, this would be by Tuesday early afternoon and evening, and it's starting to head out, and now it's just impacting parts of Maine, northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont with fairly light to moderate snowfall, and it would wrap up all before Wednesday morning. So your Wednesday morning commute might actually be fine. There shouldn't be too many travel issues if you live in northern New England. Now, here's what the European model, which we just looked at, is showing. This is on a 10-to-1 ratio, which does not include any of the additional snow ratios because of how cold it will be. So, for example, if you live in parts of Kansas, Missouri, northern Oklahoma, and that general area, just to give you an example of this, you would be dealing with temperatures in the 20s and teens as it's snowing, and because of that, you could almost multiply these by 2. You're going to have a snowfall ratio closer to 18, 19, 20 to 1, which means that for every 1 inch of liquid precipitation, you're going to see maybe 20 inches of snow. Now, we're not seeing a full inch of liquid precipitation, but you can basically multiply these by 2 since it's a 20-to-1 ratio and this map is on a 10-to-1 ratio, and you could say maybe some of these areas could see closer to 5 to 8 inches of snowfall if you were to multiply that by 2 and if your temperatures were to stay into the 20s and the teens while it's snowing. Another example, if you live down near southern Texas, Louisiana, your snow ratios are actually going to be lower than 10-to-1, maybe 8-to-1, 7-to-1 because of how warm it is going to be. It's going to be 33, 34 degrees as it's snowing, so you could maybe cut off an inch or two off of what you're seeing right here. So this is what we have to keep in mind. Some of these amounts are going to fluctuate. They're going to be higher on the northern end of this than what you're seeing, and they're going to be lower or basically the same on the southern end of things that you're seeing on this map. So this is what the European model is showing. Here's what the GFS is showing. Fairly similar, and the European and the GFS model is taking into account the temperature profile, so it's adding on some extra snowfall because it will be colder. So you can see some of those heavier amounts into parts of the interior and northeast where it's going to be consistently in the 20s for a lot of those areas. So your snow ratios might be closer to 11, 12, 13 to 1, maybe even 15 to 1 in some of those areas. And here to be what the Canadian model is showing, fairly similar. Now there is one area that I have a lot of uncertainty with, and that's going to be right through here. And this is where we don't have a lot of certainty with this. There's a lot of fluctuation within the models. Some models show 4 inches for some of these areas. Some models show no snowfall for some of these areas. So there is a lot of uncertainty if you live basically within this area, and that'll be reflected within my snowfall forecast in just a little bit. And here's what the NAM model is showing, and it's a little bit over aggressive sometimes. And this is the most north and west any of the models have this storm, and I think this is going to be further south than what you're seeing. I think the NAM usually likes to overdo these systems. If you have a stronger storm in this case, you're going to have it try to fight the high pressure a little bit and drive it further to the north and to the west. If you have a weaker storm, like usually is the case and what I think is going to happen, then this is just going to kind of ride through the high pressure and dive out to the south, and you'll see more of that snow on that western end of things. So here's what I'm expecting with this storm from today through Tuesday. This is my snowfall forecast for you guys. I'm expecting under an inch of snowfall anywhere throughout this region, and that includes pretty much everywhere on this map except for the east coast as well as parts of the northern plains. That's anywhere where I'm thinking you might get some wet snowflakes to mix in. You might get a quick coating of snow on the ground, but nothing too major. The 1 to 3 inch areas where I think you might actually get some decent accumulation, and you might actually start to see that accumulate on some of the grassy and elevated surfaces. And that includes parts of the central and southern plains up through the Tennessee and Ohio valleys and into the interior and northeast there. Here's where I'm expecting 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and that includes much of the, again, southern and even into parts of the central plains, up through the Tennessee Valley, the entire Ohio Valley for the most part, and back through the interior and northeast. Still under that 3 to 6 inch area. I even have a bigger area of 6 to 12 inch area, 6 to 12 inches of snow, and the main reasoning behind me adding this area under that 6 to 12 inch area is because I think you might actually get some fairly heavy bands if you move, if you're in that area, because because we're going to be dealing with that storm close enough to you guys while it's in the Gulf of Mexico that it could still be snowing fairly heavy and strengthening, but it won't be too close to you that it'll be raining. So I think this is going to be kind of a prime spot where you might get 1 or 2 inches per hour for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and you could put up maybe another 3 or 4 inches added on to what you already saw before. And then I also put that area through this area right here, mainly just because I think the snow ratios are going to be higher than what you're seeing on most of the models. The rest of the area that I put in the 6 to 12 is fairly similar to what the rest of the models are showing, and I do think there will be a couple areas of 12 inches plus. That's one area near Erie and Buffalo, and then another area near Watertown in upstate New York, and then one more area for northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and northern Maine there. That's where I'm looking at 12 plus inches of snowfall out of this event for you guys. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.